Hi everyone, and welcome back. This sort of companion piece to a video that I released yesterday. Yesterday it was the top 5 tips for successful distance racing, the 3,200 meters or 2 miles and the 5K. This one is about successful strategies for the middle distance races, which I'm going to classify as the 1,600 meter and the 800 meter. Just because physiologically they're very different from the 1,600 meter and the 5K, and we'll take a look at why that is briefly here in some of these tips. So at the very top are the first 5 that are going to be the success in the distance races. And the first 3 of these next ones are going to be very, very similar, but the way they kind of play out in these races are different. So you still definitely need to have a plan of attack no matter what the race distance is. I don't care if it's the 100 meters, you're going to hear a sprint coach say you need to stay in the drive phase, or if we're talking about the marathon, about where you want to actually be. You have to have a plan of attack or you are planning to fail. A lot of people need a very, minor plan. Maybe it's about where the other opposition is. Some people really want to know what their splits should be. I mentioned in the first video, some of my kids love having 400-meter splits for their entire 3,200 meters, and they thrive off of knowing, am I right there for where I'm trying to get for that race? Some kids, that just bogs them down, and they just need to kind of know, all right, whereabouts should I be at the mile, for say, or in this case, maybe at the 800-meter mark, or what should my first lap be, and not go too crazy. Having a plan for this might even break down in the shorter race, the 800, really having 200-meter splits that I like to track. A real critical part of the 800 meters is that first 100 meters of the second lap, that 500th meter from the start, that first curve of the second lap is really kind of critical. So some people break it down to where that's kind of emphasized, but have a plan of attack, and you need to know yourself and the race demand. So knowing yourself is really critical. What you can tolerate, if it's an 800 meters, I can tolerate this on the first lap and still come out and have a really good second lap. You're not going to more than likely reverse split an 800 just because of the demands of it, like the 1,600 meter, 3,200 meter, 5K. You're all going to reverse those splits for the most part if you're running to your highest potential. The 800 meters, because it's 2 laps, you're just not going to do that. But you need to know how close or how much you can push that first lap and still have a solid second lap. So let's take a look at the race demands here just to kind of see. So we mentioned here VO2 max. This is essentially your 2-mile pace. 3K is a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit faster. 5K is a little bit longer, so it's run at 97%. That's what this number is here, the percentage of VO2 max. 1,500 meter or 1,600 meter. This comes from the USATF's distance curriculum, which is mostly dealing with professional athletes, which is why you see the Ks and not really a 3,200 meter here and the 1,500 meter. But what you'll notice here is this is obviously much more anaerobic in the mile or the 1,500 than the 2 mile is. You're going to get 64% of the energy, for the most part, is going to be coming from the longer systems, and then you're going to have the increase in the energy demand from the anaerobic system here. So that is important to note, that the 1,600 meter is as close to the 2 mile as it is to the 800 meter. So it kind of needs a blend of each to kind of know what the demands are. And then the 800 meter is as close. The 400 would be right around here. This is mostly looking at distance races, so the sprint races aren't really in here. But essentially, Special Endurance 1 is as much as you can hold for 300 meters. So we're dealing with kind of right in here. And you'll notice that the 800 would be as close to the 400 meters in terms of energy demand as the 1,500 meters. So it needs to be even that much more specific to higher intensity kind of things, not as much of an emphasis on the aerobic system. It's still the most important energy system, but you need an increased demand, basically twice as much, almost a little bit more than twice as much from the anaerobic systems kind of contributing into that race. So that's what you really kind of need to know. Can you be a 1,600 meter kid and move down? Can you train as a 2 mile and move down to the 800? Absolutely. Some people thrive more on volume. Can you be a good 400 meter kid and step up to the 800? Absolutely. Kind of depending on your own muscle fiber composition. Some people can do those things. And then there are some 3,200 meter kids that will never ever put together a solid 800. A boy maybe only able to go like 205, 206, something like that, or a girl only able to go like 230 no matter what you do. But some of those kids, they can do those things, and it's kind of also having those other things in place to be able to be successful in a wider variety of things. So Just getting back to where we were. And also very important is knowing the competition. You need to know, is this a race where, say, the 800 meters, is it going to get out really fast? And if I don't get out fast with them, am I going to get bogged down? Not as big of a factor in the 3,200 meters with 8 laps, or the 5K having 3.1 miles to make up for the first 200 meters. But when you're dealing with a race that's only 800 meters, man, every meter counts. So you have to kind of know, how is this race going to go out? And am I going to be gone? Am I going to be out of it before we even start the race, essentially? Or are there a lot of people that are going to try and sit and kick, and maybe you're not somebody that does well in that? Knowing what the competition is, knowing, are these people going to have a good race tactic? Can I kind of follow them a little bit? Or do these people go out too fast? Is this an 800-meter group who, it's a bunch of boys that are going to try and go, you know, 56 on their first lap and then die out to, you know, 65 on the second lap? You would never want to see splits that far if they've been kind of trained to have a good aerobic system along with it. You wouldn't want to see that. And if that's the case, then you kind of need to let those kids go and then be smart and know your own self and know your own race demands and follow your own plan. So knowing what the competition is going to do is going to allow you to, in those shorter middle distance races, the mile, the half mile, be able to react. You know, is there somebody on that mile that's going to go out on that first lap and go 60? And there's no way, unless they're the best, you know, high school, you know, middle distance runner in the country, be able to hold that kind of pace. So just knowing the competition, knowing what you can do and what they're going to do. Now, this is where things start to differ. We said easy does it early in the middle part of the race. It's a long race, the 2 mile and the 5K. So often those kids go out so fast and then they're just struggling to get across the finish line. You're going to have to go faster in these races, comparatively speaking, to the 3,200 meter and the 5K. You still can't, you know, win or be super successful, run a PR 800 or 1,600 meters because of that first 200 or the first lap of the mile, but you have to have a more aggressive first, say, 50 meters, 60 meters, even 100 meters coming around that turn, but you have to settle in quickly too so that you don't get yourself into oxygen debt. It's going to feel easy early. You're relying on the available ATP in your muscles and the creatine phosphate system. Those are the fastest energy producing systems, but they only last 6 to 7 seconds. Use it. It's going to be gone whether you go fast at the beginning or not, but you have to settle in once you've had a chance to kind of clear things. The 800, this happens so often where, you know, people will just go out so fast, and they may be taking themselves out of the race, that's true, but you may be out of the race for a completely different reason if you don't also have a competitive fast start, but then know when to settle in, how to slide yourself over to the inside safely without getting tangled up into all the issues. Definitely by that second turn, so you're not running extra distance, an extra 7 meters per lane if you're on the outside per lap. So you don't want to be running a 207 or an 807 when everybody else is running an 800, or a 1607 when everybody else is running a 1600 meters. So have a couple of videos to kind of illustrate this. Go ahead and right here. Okay, so this is from our state championship. This is from a young lady named Brianna Rivers from a number of years ago. She is currently running at UMass Amherst, and I just want to kind of show you what can happen in these races. So Brianna is right here, so you can kind of follow her. Right. So as they get out, this is a very fast beginning. Bree is kind of right here in the middle. Young lady is really going out. This is a 400-meter girl who got recruited for a 400-meter speed. So she's going to go out in the first lap at 57. What I'm circling here is the fact that Brianna is just caught up in a whole lot of mess right here. The girl from Riverview is in a fantastic position. She is I would call a pure distance kid, and is in a much easier position, able to use, you know, the inside, and she's not really being bogged down. As we come through here, again, Brianna's just kind of in a mess here. Brianna's a very fast runner. She was about a 56 400-meter runner in her time. But she's doing so much more because the first step, not the first step, but the first 100 could have just been slightly more aggressive. Now, she's sitting in about 6th place. I mean, this is a speed freak, the kid who's out front. But the girl who's in 2nd place is not really going to factor into this race. The two girls now making the move on the outside. Bree wearing the number 1, Bailey from Riverview wearing the number 3 are starting to make their move because they didn't go crazy early, but Bailey kind of had herself a little bit better position as we start here the second lap. See if I can move forward here just a little bit. And as we come through the second lap, this gap has opened up. A lot of these kids did go out really fast, so it is an in-between, but Bailey really had a good position. Bree, who's got a lot of speed, you will see really makes a move here, and you'll see how close she makes it on this last little bit. The young lady from Miami Southridge is in first place still. Look at this finish here, but Brianna is again having to be all the way out into almost lane 3, doing extra, and she ends up getting second place by 0.12 seconds. And maybe, just maybe, had we been slightly better positioned early on, it may have not happened. Still fantastic. She went 2:10, and that was her PR, and ended up getting a full ride scholarship from UMass. So obviously a fantastic runner, but maybe just a little bit of positioning early, and maybe we could have been 0.12 ahead. A great example of how this plays out in a really successful way is from her younger brother, Trey, in his regional championship in the 1600 meters, but for kind of opposite reasons. And this kind of really, everything plays out in that, let me jump forward here just a little bit. The race gets out, and Trey really kind of, I mean, he's right there with this whole big group. He's not really in a bad position. He is right here to the outside. He's about to take the lead. This wasn't really a super aggressive first lap. The young man who's in second place, the tall kid here, is a 1:55 half-miler, and he's also a 15-minute 5K kid. The young man here, Tristan, from St. Cloud, won the 3,200 meter earlier in the day. So Trey kind of got out, and then he kind of identified, this is kind of slow, and these kids do tend to do that sometimes in the race. One of the things we talked about beforehand is be careful of the sit and kick. Now the young man from George Jenkins here is getting a little bit aggressive with it, but Trey kind of realized as he came through, I mean, 67 on the first lap of her regional championship, or regional race, I should say, is not especially fast. And then it slips down a little bit more from there. Trey realizes, all right, well, this pace is, you know, not too challenging for me. He's able to hold about 71 on his 3,200 meter earlier in the day in his 3,200 meter race. And just kind of putting it on cruise control for a little bit. We're kind of hoping that potentially one of these other people take the lead because he is in a good position. But for right now, we're just kind of content. This slips, the second lap slips into 72nd pace, which is 4:40, which is not fast for a regional championship type race. But you can just see everybody else is just kind of clustered in all and around here. There's a lot of really fast, really solid kids in this race as we go through this. And it's kind of like, who's going to get impatient first? Who's going to blink first? Who is going to not be disciplined? And the kid from Steinbrenner here, who's a very solid kid, has beaten Trey once or twice in this regular season. And then the kid, as I mentioned, I believe his name is Brady from George Jenkins in that kind of greenish yellow, both go with 2 laps to go. Too early, and we'll see they will not play a factor in this race. They do not stay patient and relax. Now, Trey also kind of wakes up a little bit here, too, because as I mentioned, 67 and 70 is not very fast for him. I mean, he's going 71s on his 2-mile. But the other 2 kids, I would say, were probably in that 6 to 7 seed, probably wanted to be a little bit more patient. And the 2 kids who were right with Trey at the beginning are now starting to move with him as things wind up just a little bit. This third lap moves into 67 pace. But Trey has put himself in a fantastic position, and our states, at this point, only the top 4. There were no wild cards. Florida has a wild card system now, but top 4 get out, and right now Trey is sitting in second place. As we're about to move to the final lap, where it is won and lost, the kid from George Jenkins again tries to make a move a little bit early, and we're going to pause it right there, and we're going to go to the last of these. Fast start, settle in quickly, And it only works if you really, really go all out on these middle distance races. We talked about in the 5K and the 3,200 meter, it's kind of a wind-up approach, right? So the first 6 laps of the 3,200 meter, you want to kind of have a plan, sort of stick to it, try and have sort of an even splitting. You can even split it because you're running aerobically. And then that second to last lap, you wind things up just a little bit, maybe back to, 2 or 3 seconds faster than the other ones, and then you go relatively all out on the last lap. It's sort of like those teams you also see the last mile of that 5K. That might be a little bit aggressive, but that last bit of the race, the last quarter where you go all out. It's a different kind of all out in the distance races. This is absolutely nothing to wait for finishing in these mid-distance races. You saw it with Brianna, where she had a kick to the outside and really, really went a 2:10 half mile for a girl is obviously very, very, solid work, and she had to really go on that last bit to get there. Let's see how Trey does in his final lap here. As I mentioned, so the young man from Steinbrenner and the young man from George Jenkins went a little bit early on this. Trey is right here in third. Tristan from St. Cloud, who won the 3,200 meter earlier in the day. This is a young man from the young man 155 from, oh geez, I am spacing right now, Lakewood Ranch, excuse me. And then this young man here from Sarasota is also a very, very solid runner. He's a 2-time state champion in cross country. So let's see how this last lap plays out. People start to get a little bit aggressive, a little bit early. Those two that are way up front, or the kid from Steinbrenner is already starting to fall back. This kid is leading here, and look at how Trey on these last 300 meters just explodes. He was 67 first lap, 70 second lap, 67 third lap, and man, that is the kind of kick that is hard to deal with in these races. Gets to the point where you almost don't even see the other kids. The Steinbrenner kid is completely out of the race. The young man from Sarasota, who was patient, as you notice here, is taking over 4th place and is going to steal that 4th place spot. So the top 4 right now is how they finish. Trey opening up a big gap, was that maybe about 10 meters, 15 meters, in a very competitive region, and drops a 59-second last 400 after the first little bit to go for, I think it was 4:25 officially when he came through. So, that is have a plan of attack, knowing yourself. I want to show one more video where this all really sort of plays out, and this is from a kid named Frankie Godbold, senior year. Was trained like a 2-miler his whole time. We thought it was a 2-miler. He is all the way out here. Had never run faster than 2:08, and then in our district meet went 2:03 and got second. And we'll see how these things play out. This was trained like a 2-miler moving down, as we mentioned. This can absolutely happen if you have a really good plan of attack here. So let's kind of see. That's not what I wanted. Let's kind of see how this all plays out in this 800 meters. Got to get out fast, especially when you're all the way out there in lane 8. And our plan for Frankie was to just kind of try and sit in about the top 8. Let's see if we can score, and then see what we've got at the end. Frankie had shown fantastic promise in things like his fly 30s, really fast work, and really sort of splits this gap, really smart here, and he's in that sort of 8th place position here. Now things get really, really crowded, and he's lucky that he didn't fall there, but he got into a position to where he was close. Now this young man here is also not, I don't even remember who this was, but he is not going to play out in the top 4, went out way, way too fast. Here's the young man that I just showed you in Treys Race in the mile. The Lakewood Ranch has a fantastic middle distance group, and they've actually got 2. Actually, this is the one that I should have been saying that was in Treys Race that you just saw. Frankie is right here. I believe he's in 7th or 8th place as we cross in 59 seconds. A very competitive first lap, but nothing crazy. And look at how Frankie really positions himself. The last 200 meters, 250, 300, 200 meters is where things really sort of have to play out in this race, just because it's so much shorter, and you really have to kind of wait to go when it's most advantageous. The 2 kids from Lakewood Ranch start to wind things up. Frankie's in a good position to where he's not boxed in. He is going to move to the outside here. Really turn it on in the same way that Trey did. The kid he's just passing is the one he lost to for the regional championship. It's our big rival school. That's also a Steinbrenner kid. And just keeps on turning over. Here's the kid that was all the way in first place on the first couple laps. Won't really be a factor here as we move things on. The two Lakewood Ranch kids and Frankie are coming around. The young man in the light blue is a kid named Dominic from Newsman. He's a sophomore this year. He's the one that gets that last position. And just absolutely just drives and turns it over and turns it over and turns it over. And Frankie gets that third spot and makes it to states in 1:57. So that really kind of shows you, if we get back to this, when everything, and Frankie put this all together, Trey really did in his race too, is when you have that plan, you know yourself and the demands, you don't get ahead of your plan, you know the competition and what you can and can't do, that fast start, but a settling in quickly so you're not doing too much, and absolutely everything you've got for that last, whatever the critical zone is for the race, about the last lap for the 1600 meters, about the last 200, 250 for the 800, and just really kind of going all out at that point. So if you like this video, please think about liking or subscribing. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments down below. If you found this helpful, please consider sharing this around. And until next time, this has been Coachy TV.